But my name is Mary Hess. I'm the supervisor of the township. And so the Committee on Youth is something that would fall under my purview. And this committee is something that has existed in the past, and we're looking to bring it back. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight is what existed and what could be. And so we have a PowerPoint presentation prepared. But before we get into the formality of that, if we could maybe just go around the room and do introductions, tell us who you are, maybe what organization you're affiliated with, and why this particular topic interests you. So if we want to, Shatoya, you want to kick us off? Thank you.
My name is Toya Jackson. I am the Director of School-Based Services as well as Youth Programming at Family Service Agency. I'm also a bilingual therapist and a crisis worker there for our Runaway and Lockout program.
And I am Shay Hill. I am school-based youth programming lead. I also do crisis work as well. I go into the schools and work with a lot of the youth here. Yeah. And I'm with FSA as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Amy Dyer. I'm a community member. I moved into DeKalb in 1998 and keep moving out and coming back. DeKalb sucks you in, but it's a neat community. And basically I just got a master's in humanitarian and disaster leadership. So disasters, refugee care, and human trafficking. And so I've just seen like our community have just like crime increase, a lot of struggles with our youth, especially coming out of the pandemic. And I just want to do something about it and yeah, just do something good and volunteer in my community. So
awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Florence Gerlach, and I'm just a retired citizen in DeKalb Township. And we've raised our children, and they've moved away, far away. And we were very involved with youth in the past, my husband and I in the Boy Scouts. So now we think that we would be interested in working with youth again.
I'm Peter Gerlach. I'm her husband, also retired and sitting around way too much. So she told me about it. It sounded like something worth at least checking out. Besides, as she mentioned, a couple of decades of scout leader work. I also have, I think it's 7 years as a substitute teacher in DeKalb schools. So worth checking out and see what you have to say.
Fantastic.
And then my name is Kim Barrios. I'm the communications and administrative lead at the DeKalb Township.
Do you have a personal interest in?
Oh, yes, I do. I do.
Are you here because you have to be here?
Oh, no. So I actually, when I was talking with Mary about this role, one of the things that interested me about the township in general was the fact that it had a committee on youth. And that was just one of the populations that I have kind of a heart for. And so I am a youth sports coach. That's primarily how I interact with youth. But I do Sunday school at my church, and just kids in general are kind of my thing. So
awesome. Awesome. Well, again, thank you all for being here. It's just wonderful to see a turnout like this. You know, granted, it may be 6 people sitting in the room, but you've all been to those other events where you've put things on and no one shows up. So, you know, I'm just delighted that you all came out tonight, especially with the way the weather is. So we'll just go ahead and get started. And I'm going to do part of the presenting, then Kim's going to take over. And then I hope that we can have a good discussion about everything that you've seen tonight and that you'll share your thoughts and ideas with us. So please feel free to stop us if you have any questions, but I don't know how well I'll be able to see the screen. So Kim, just let me know.
sure.
All right. Okay. All right. So what is a committee on youth? As it pertains to townships, as a unit of government, we have a certain set of laws that we have to abide by called the Illinois Township Code. And in the Illinois Township Code, there is a whole section about committees on youth and what we are allowed to do within the constraints of the law. And so we are allowed to have this committee. It has to consist of a minimum of 3 or 5 members who are willing to serve 3-year terms. And so we are looking for, somewhat of a commitment, because, as you know, time flies, and it will take some time to get things up and running. And then to continue to be effective, having the same people will serve us well. The main purpose that they want to see townships covering is to address juvenile delinquency. Anything we can do to prevent it, and specifically looking at the needs of our local youth. What could we do to address anything that can help bring those numbers down with juvenile delinquency? And this can be something that we do stand alone. We develop this committee and we execute and carry out the work, or we can contract with other organizations to do the work. So for example, Shatoya is there with Family Service Agency. They offer a lot of programs already. It may be, rather than us carrying out any of the work, that we contract with them to do some programming that we want to put our name on, things that we feel passionate about. It could be things with the scouts. It could be things through the schools. So there's really not a lot of restrictions on who we coordinate with, aside from that they have to be a 501c3, and they have to be in existence for at least 1 year. So in the past, we would get Committee on Youth funding applications, from, God bless, individuals who have a commitment to help youth in this community, but they aren't associated with anything. And the law prevents us from providing funding to an individual who doesn't have that registration status of a 501c3. And then there is a organization called the Association of Illinois Townships Committee on Youth, where they host sessions from time to time on subjects that would be pertinent to the work that's carried out by these committees. So the work's been done already. There are a lot of townships that have these committees on youth. And then we can go to, this association for advice on carrying out our activities. As I mentioned, we did have an active committee on youth in the past. It was started under Supervisor Eric Johnson in 2012. And there you can read the mission. The committee at that time decided they wanted to advise the township board on the provision of programs and services that would prevent and combat juvenile delinquency, and to try to serve the underserved and underprivileged youth living in our community. And this was done through partnerships, or the creation or funding of youth activities. So they developed a set of bylaws. They agreed to hold meetings once a month, and ultimately they made the decision to become a grant fulfilling committee. So they adopted a application process where organizations in the community would fill out this application saying the program they were going to provide, what the objectives were of the program. They tied in the 40 developmental assets to that. And so the 40 developmental assets are a framework of positive engagements that young people need. It's proven that the more exposed young people are to the 40 developmental assets, the more likely they are to have success in their life. The youth engaged in philanthropy, that was started through the Community Foundation also uses the 40 developmental assets as a basis for their funding. And so what I can gather is that this Township Committee on Youth more or less adopted the same application that the Youth Engaged in Philanthropy was using. And so it's great that it was based on a framework that is shown to bring success to young people, but it doesn't quite look like they really went anywhere further with that. And so based on a report, I was able to find the committee originally decided that they were going to do grants up to $500, and an organization could receive that once a fiscal year to provide their services or whatever program they were doing. And you can see in 2013 and 2014, that was a dollar amount distributed. And those were the number of applications that were received in those years. I couldn't find any reports after that original 2-year period to say what was funded. I could go back through our meeting minutes, but I know that they did drop off significantly. We still have them trickle in, and now we are giving up to $750. So it was a pretty good start, I think, when they started this committee.
Mary, can you
yeah.
speak to how those applications are currently being approved if there's not an active committee on youth?
Yes, now when we receive those applications, I take them to the board with a recommendation. I do the research to make sure that it's an organization that has existed for more than a year, that it's a 501c3, and that we have all the background material. And I share it with the board and make a recommendation on approval or to not approve it. And so that's how we've been handling it for the last couple of years. In the report that I found, I also came across a few other things that I think are worth sharing. The board reported, or the committee members reported, that getting the word out to local organizations to apply, that they found that to be challenging. I did see, as I continue to look at grants through the years, that they seem to be coming from the organizations that those committee members were affiliated with. So the board chair was the principal of Clinton Rosette Middle School. We saw things coming from Clinton Rosette Middle School. There was a particular board member that was affiliated with the church, so there were grants there. And so a lot of times, which I saw in the minutes, is that board members were abstaining from the votes because they were the ones to bring them. So there wasn't a lot of, I don't want to say there wasn't buy-in from the community, but for whatever reason, it wasn't filtering out the way they anticipated it would. At some point, they decided to increase the amount of the grant from 500 to 750. I think that was based on some feedback on the length of the application and, getting $500. It was still a significantly lower amount to carry out some of these programs. I was not able to find anything about follow-up on the programs that they funded to find out if they had been effective, if there's any pre and post tests to determine if individuals who participate in those programs learned anything that would, help with, maybe decision-making or social skills or whatever the program was addressing. I also wasn't able to find anything on education that the committee did in order for organizations to fill out the applications. There's a lot of questions about the 40 developmental assets. And I wasn't able to find that they provided any education on that, not even, maybe some reading materials to go out with the applications. So I think that's definitely an opportunity we could seize because of the research behind the assets. And it just so happens that several years ago, I ran an organization called DeKalb County Keys, which stood for Keep Encouraging Youth to Succeed, which was based on the 40 developmental assets. So I certainly can bring information to this committee about incorporating the assets. And the Regional Office of Education has since picked up the developmental assets and are doing educational and awareness services surrounding them. The next one I already touched on, that the applications were brought to the committee by organizations that they were affiliated with. over time, I saw that the committee meetings kind of started to, each year there were fewer and fewer. And then the last known meeting was February of 2020, but there wasn't a quorum, so they couldn't even hold the meeting. So I am going to hand it over to Kim now. Kim has done a significant amount of research on what other townships committees on youth do. They're kind of all across the board. Just as a point of reference, DeKalb Township is kind of a mid-size township. There are many townships that are significantly smaller than ours in that they don't have any staff. They don't have really a building that's open to the public. They just have their elected officials who carry out their statutory duties, and don't do extra type of programming like this. And then when you get further east toward the city, there are townships that are much larger than ours that have multiple buildings, they have multiple departments. The supervisor's office is a staff of 2. It's myself and Kim. And Kim is full-time, and she, as she mentioned, she carries out our communications work, all of our social media work, and helps with administrative tasks. And then we have another department called General Assistance, and that's where we administer financial assistance programs. And there's 2 full-time case managers that work in that program. So we are a small staff. And so I think that's important for you to understand as Kim gets into what some other townships are doing through their committees.
Very good. So before I jump into that, I do want to point out, since Mary mentioned that one of the challenges that the Committee on Youth has had in the past was getting the word out there. So there was kind of a little arrow pointing up to all applications for the Committee on Youth funding are on our website. So any organization that's interested in seeking to apply, they can go onto our website. There's a little button that you can click to complete the application. And then again, that can go to Mary, who will bring it to the Board of Trustees in the interim. But the intention is for there to be a Committee on Youth that would review all of them. Okay, so in terms of other townships, the biggest thing is the needs of every community are different. So what one community struggles with, another doesn't struggle with. There might be resources available in one community that don't exist in another community. So what committees on youth focus on are going to vary greatly based off of those things. But I did look at a number of other townships, Committee on Youth programs. And just to kind of summarize, these are some of the highlights that I saw that the committees on youth were intentionally addressing. So gang violence and delinquency prevention, restorative services. So that's going to be things like youth that maybe have to do community service. It may involve some mediation type things in that. Effective parenting classes. Promoting confidence in children and teens by way of a number of different programs, academic equity and achievement for all, and that comes in a variety of forms, substance abuse prevention, building strong and healthy relationships between youth and residents, youth employment or employment readiness, and then youth mental health and well-being. So those are kind of the functions or the focuses that these different committees on youth have tackled, but how they go about doing that, again, is different from township to township. So I wanted to just touch on some of those as well. So we have recognizing and celebrating leadership in youth. So there's one particular township that kind of has like an annual gala of sorts where they honor some of their local youth. There is, how many people are familiar with the DeKalb Leadership Academy offered through the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce or some other municipal's leadership academy? Some townships have something similar that's for their youth. There's tutoring programs, summer bridge programs, so like more intensive programs over the summer for kids that have a higher need. Some of these townships offer academic scholarships. it should be noted that there is restrictions on the way that tax dollars can be used when it comes to scholarships. So funding for that does have to be done in a little bit different way. College and financial aid expos, when I've seen this, it's been done in collaboration with a school district. So it's not a township doing it on their own, but trying to work with other organizations in the community. Counseling and referral services. Like Mary said, the staff size really is dependent on the township. So there actually are townships that have counselors on their staff. And so those townships are able to offer those counseling services. In other cases, they might have somebody who's trained in mental health, but not necessarily with the appropriate degree. So that person might make recommendations to other organizations in the community. And then just to keep going with this, there's some substance abuse and prevention education programming, suicide prevention and education, Narcan training, drug deactivation kits. I had to look that up. I didn't know what it was. Does anybody know what a drug deactivation kit is? Okay, so a drug deactivation kit is actually a safe way to dispose of used prescriptions or unused prescriptions at home. So there are, you can take them to certain drop sites, but there's actually a company that has created a way that people can dispose of this on their own. And so some townships make those kits available to residents to try to dissuade youth from using those unused prescriptions. Prescription take back events. And the list continues to go on here. A hygiene closet, school supply closet, a social skills camp or series, managing emotions type class. There's a program called Girls on the Rise that addresses self-esteem, as well as some other issues, particularly in adolescent girls. Community justice, I mentioned before. And then there is a challenge program. If you're familiar with like adventure-based type counseling or learning, the challenge program kind of falls within that. All sorts of activities, camps, etc. Mentoring. Some townships provide just safe spaces where their youth can come. So like a park district type building, but they have a recreation facility where youth can come and be safe. Parenting toolbox or parenting resources, and then depression screenings. So those are examples of things that we found that are definitely in existence in some way, shape, or form already through other townships. But there's a lot of other possibilities. You might have come into this meeting today with your own thoughts about what DeKalb needs or what our community needs. So just some other things would be anti-bullying education, child safety, recognizing grooming behavior, the human trafficking prevention piece is up there, internet or cell phone safety for both parents and youth. These are just, again, a number of things that are possibilities, but the goal of this committee is really to address the needs of our unique community. You might have ideas about what you could do to better the Committee on Youth for local youth and families. And so if that's the case, then this committee might be for you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mary and she can kind of talk through what to expect moving forward.
Okay. Thanks, Kim.
Sure.
So really what we hoped to do is present you with what has existed in the past and then the, menu of possibilities that could exist in the future if, we can get enough people involved in reforming this committee and taking the direction of the members. Some of you are more engaged in youth in our community right now to know what the needs are. We certainly can reach out to schools, to even the police department, find out, what kind of trends they're seeing, so we can better identify the needs in our community. But really tonight is just to give an overview of what the possibilities are. Certainly there'll be work that needs to be done. And that's what's kind of listed on this slide here with discussion and next steps. Is in order for us to be effective as a committee, I think it's important that we know what the needs are in the community. There are other things that weren't presented tonight that we should take into consideration. How engaged do the members of this committee want to be? Do you want to meet once a month and just kind of be passive and approve funding? Or would you like a more hands-on approach? Or is it a hybrid of the two? And then taking an inventory of the resources that are already present in the community, and are there ways we can collaborate? Are there gaps in service? And just looking at, with the township as a potential funding source, how could we use some of our tax dollars to effectively meet the needs of young people living here in order to help improve their quality of life? So it's, it's a big plate. And we just need to decide where we want to go from here. So with that, I'd like to open it up and hear your thoughts about what you heard tonight, and maybe what your expectations were and what you're thinking now.
I'm curious what the current needs are that you're seeing.
So I'd say the biggest need right now that we're actually working on is our crisis intervention piece. Last year we did have a death of a student, and then this year we did in September, and then again in November. And even from that September to November mark, we didn't think it was going to happen so soon, and it did. So right now we're looking into educating the staff, providing that psychoeducation to the families and the staff members, training them to see those warning signs, those red flags. There's a lot of speculation going on with this latest one, but there was talk about truancy. So it's, are we looking at the attendance? Are we doing our due diligence to reach out to the family to see what's going on with that youth? Or are we letting them just slide under the radar? And then what kind of services could we have been providing for that youth within the school, or even after school that they would have came to, that they weren't already getting through the school district. So right now we are on suicide prevention for sure.
Okay.
Is a huge focus, and that is definitely coming from depression and anxiety both. So
Okay. All right.
yeah, it's a huge need right now.
Okay. So community awareness about some of those issues. It obviously we're going to leave the professionals to deal with, providing the support to people in the schools and families and so forth. But okay. And the world has changed so much since COVID.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know how my children have been impacted by COVID, but I can't imagine what it is for younger people and what climates are like at home and in the schools and so forth.
I know, wasn't it New Hope that had just done some sort of a community survey about like
the mental
needs?
health board?
Okay. So I think that there probably is some relatively recent information out there.
Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't, with that particular survey, they didn't capture youth. I mean, even 18 to 20-year-olds, the turnout was very, very low. So,
Okay.
but I don't know, this from the schools, they do that, what's that? Not a needs assessment every year, but it's on school climate.
Not familiar.
Is that the one that they send out to the parents to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the kids do it too.
I know what you're talking about because I get the email.
Is that 5 essentials or something like that?
Yes, yeah. Sounds like something to do with names.
Yes.
Us. So one thing, and you kind of touched on it, Mary, but I do want to kind of just reiterate the idea that, well, the framework for the committee is laid out. The essence is to be a grant approving committee, but then it could be a lot of other things too. And so it could be a committee that says, we have this particular problem and we want to find a solution by asking partners in the community to maybe like pitch us with a program that we could, use to solve this problem. And then we select a program to fund. Or it could be where people just, bring their ideas to us and we approve them or we don't based off of our, a grant funding process. This committee could choose to do events. They could choose to host a suicide prevention, a one-time sort of thing. And again, other people may have other ideas, but the idea here is to paint with a very broad brush and say, have we inspired you? Have we interested you? If so, we would love for you to consider filling out an application, share your ideas with us. And then that committee ultimately will kind of be the ones to make that decision, correct, Mary?
Yeah. Once we assemble a group, then we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into what is it that this group wants to do, knowing that, you're gonna be committed for a period of 3 years. What are you capable of doing? And I think it's really important. What are you most passionate about doing? Because when you're passionate about doing something, it's not going to seem like work. And so that's why, we're opening it up to the entire community. In the past, the Committee on Youth was made up of professionals from youth serving organizations in our community. I love that you two are here tonight and that you have a history of working with youth and that you're here because you are passionate about that. And so I think that, that's what can make this special is tapping into everyone's skill set and carrying out things that you want to do and will be effective with our youth population. So tell me what kind of, when you were coming to this meeting and you heard about a Committee on Youth, what did you envision us talking about tonight and what you were?
For me, it was pretty much what we've talked about. I think that I see that there's problems. I read about them, I hear about them. I've talked to teachers and different people in the community, and I know we have problems. I see the disasters, I see the crisis that we're in at times. And coming today was, what can I do in any way to impact that or to help or to give input or just to stand by and assist other people in doing it. And that's what I thought about.
Okay.
That was just pure curiosity. Let's see what is said and, what kind of directions this is going, just to see what it is before I can consider anything,
Okay.
I think for me, so my previous career was community nutrition. So I worked in the food banking industry and I grew the community nutrition programs across our 13 Northern Illinois counties. And so I think for me, I was able to, as a monitor for USDA's Child and Adult Care Food Program, I monitored hundreds of after-school at-risk programs over 13 counties. And so I got to see hundreds of different styles of these at-risk programs. The one program that I really liked visiting was Henry Hyde Resource Center in Addison in DuPage County. It's a resource center that's planted in a high need community where it is actually, they work with the local police department. So they do like after school homework help, and then the police officers actually do prevention programs with all of the kids. So to like a community effort where people can get their needs met, there's resources, they're building that relationship with law enforcement. The educational needs are met as well with all of the kids. And then we would provide like free like nutritious meals. And so I really loved like that idea of where's our, and I don't know if there is one, but like where you can say like increased need in this area. And I love, my personal passion is to one day like have a community center in this town where we do have that partnership with our police department, where there's that homework health, where there's social services, and we're building up the community, working together alongside each other to build up the community and just say like, okay, because I know DeKalb is very segregated. We have this community and this community and this community, but like, how can we bring them all together, like bring everyone together for a purpose? What kind of program can we develop in this community that would really lead to high impact? Where we can actually like maybe even get referrals from schools to say like, okay, these are our high need at-risk kids, refer them to this program, you know, take that pre-assessment, work with them 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, make a commitment to every kid and like, you know, kind of develop them, their social and emotional skills, academic skills, but then building up community service as well. And then they would learn all the skills, like the mental health skills and the police officers or like whatever, prevention, you know, drugs or whatever it may be. So yeah, I was thinking big. I was thinking a career for myself. I really want to be the director.
I love your ambition. Was this in a, like, how did students get there? What was the?
Yeah, so it's surrounded by a ton of apartment complexes in this high need area of Addison. And so they actually built this resource center in the middle of all these, like in this area of all these apartment complexes.
Okay. Okay.
So they targeted the area and said, we're gonna build this center and put our money here, and which I thought was pretty neat. So it's, and I like that model, you know, I think for somebody just in the food banking industry, like instead of having people go get the food, let's bring the food to the people in the community where it's needed most, right? And that's what happens a lot of time with resources. We expect people to come get the resources, but let's go to where the people actually are already. And that's what I'd like to see done with the youth in this community. Where are those youth? What are they doing? Where are they hanging out? Where are they getting in trouble? Like, where do we need to be? Let's go there and let's make an impact.
Right. Right. Awesome. Okay. And your thoughts, Shatoya? And
I just knew she was staring. I mean, yeah, I think the program you're talking about is amazing. I think that the one thing that DeKalb is probably missing is that one place, because we do bring the food to the people. We are bringing the programming to these kids. We are going in those neighborhoods. I think where we lacked a lot for some years was who we were telling to go to those neighborhoods. Because if we're going to a neighborhood where the population is all those who are Black, and you have a committee come in who's all white, they're not going to respond to that very well. It's not going to last very long. So one of the things that I continuously try to grow is our team being completely diverse, so that any kid, any neighborhood we go into, they're able to relate to us in some type of way. I think that's what works, is meeting them at their level, having people who have experienced what they may be going through, who can be compassionate and empathetic with them, so that they feel heard. That's what they need, is people who understand them. And I think that as bad as it looks right now, there are people out there doing really good things, having really good programming, but some of the things that do stop us is the money. It's the funding. I mean, I have a team out there doing great work, but probably more than half of my staff are graduate interns and undergrad interns. Because we don't have the full staff that I do need because of funding.
right.
So yeah, I think that it would be great to have a resource center, and I know exactly where I would want it.
And
That would be amazing.
where is it that you would want it?
Over by Annie Glidden.
Okay.
Definitely in that area. Mhm.
Well, and so in that area, I mean, I think we can all agree that there have been a lot of, in the past several years, many more services and programs being brought to that part of town. One of the things that, you know, we're challenged by as a township, if depending on what direction we go with this Committee on Youth, is that we have a responsibility to serve the entire township. And so, you know, how do we diversify our base of services so that, you know, kids that don't have transportation, that live on one part of the town, can still participate in activities and services. So that's just something to, to keep into, take into consideration as we decide how we're going to move forward.
But to clarify, are we working with a $750 grant? Is that?
That's just something that's how the Committee on Youth used to operate, is that we, like, if we were the committee sitting around the table here, someone would provide an application and say they wanted to provide this service, and they'd give a breakdown of the budget. They'd provide some evidence on how this program or service is allegedly going to help combat or prevent juvenile delinquency. And as committee members, you would have a discussion about it and decide if you wanted to fund it or not. So that's how they used to function. And we could go down that path again, or we could, maybe change it in certain ways. It all depends on the willingness of the people who want to get involved in this committee.
Would the committee be able to bring their own programming if they had programs that they thought would benefit the youth and the town?
The community?
No, the committee. For instance, like I saw one with parenting education on there, right? So I am actually certified in one of parenting class, active parenting, and it goes through 3. So what if we wanted to have a program to target like the teens in the neighborhood or whatever that is? Could we personally, like, do the committee have to submit an application?
No, I mean, like, if we wanted to do it as a service of the Committee on Youth, we would self-fund, whatever is needed to do that. We could coordinate, a site to hold that, do the marketing for it. And that's certainly an approach we could take, is that to offer some sort of educational program a couple of times a year. I know that when I was involved with the Keys initiative, where we focused on the 40 developmental assets, we partnered with the United Way, and once a year had a youth and family volunteer fair, because we know that youth who volunteer in the community are developing some of those important assets that help their development, help with positive character development. And so it might be that we just simply host a couple of events throughout the year, or it could be a combination of the two. We're really open to anything. We're not going to dictate what this committee is going to do, because we're not the experts on what the youth need in this community, or what you as potential committee members are willing to take on. So it's really just an exploration of ideas tonight.
And I think part of what Shay's question was, if I understood it properly, was could committee members submit an application for funding? And in the past, committee members could, they just could not vote on their own funding requests.
Yes. As a larger organization, you can submit an application. As an individual,
Right.
Like there was someone in the community who was offering submitted an application in the past year, who was offering a summer jump rope program, which is great. I mean, I know that that there's so many youth who are attracted to jump rope, and there's like all kinds of different types, and it's such a popular thing. But unfortunately, this individual wasn't affiliated with any type of 501c3, and we can't just cut a check to someone. So, but if you wanted to do that, as on behalf of Family Service Agency, then that's something we could look at.
It'd be interesting to take one of the ideas and just do like an experiment, because like experiment pilot and then you program. Yeah. So just to like kind of like map out what the big picture is of what we think would be most helpful for youth in this community, and say like, what would that look like? Is just like a quick Spitfire experiment this coming summer. And it's like a pop-up trailer, which is our community center, and our like something, but like, what would that look like? Yeah. and just test it out, like a small, like little test, and use this kind of idea and this funding for like a test
Right.
experiment for an idea.
And there is something along the lines of what you're talking about that does exist. And I have a personal connection with it, but several years ago, a program started in University Village called Camp Power. And it certainly has changed now versus what it was. But it was based on the 40 developmental assets. We did have a police officer there every day to build relationship with the kids. We had parents who we trained to become the camp counselors. There was a nutrition component. Lunches were brought in. And on top of that, we had fresh fruits, or we had gardens there. And so kids learned how to harvest it and make snacks from it and so forth. So, and there were really great outcomes that came out of that. We did do pre and post assessments with those things. So an experiment like that has happened in this community. Unfortunately, the camp has gotten away from what its original mission was and programs. But that's not to say that we couldn't get involved in that. But that is limited to one part of town and only a small segment of our youth population, really. So
Yeah, we'd have to get the transportation piece down and how to make that more inclusive.
yeah. So I don't want to keep you more than an hour. Are there any other thoughts or comments? Kind of the direction where I wanted to go is we wanted to share all this information with you tonight. Kim has applications that she's going to give each of you. If you are interested in taking things to the next level, it would be submitting or filling out that application and returning it to us. And then after the first of the year, we would convene a meeting with everyone who says they're interested in getting involved and start brainstorming.
Mary, would it be a fair statement to say that once there's kind of a meeting of the minds, that group of people will discuss a lot of the framework and expectations and like what days of the week they might meet and how frequently, and like that's going to be decided by those members, correct?
Right. Yeah. What we're trying to do with these information or interest meetings is just put the information out there about what this committee could potentially be, see if you think it's a right fit for you, if it's something you want to commit to. And then next steps will be really nailing down what we want to do as a group.
And so if somebody fills out an application tonight and they attend that meeting and it seems like other people are kind of going in a different direction than maybe what they were thinking, could they at that point in time still step away and say maybe it wasn't for them? Or does
absolutely. Yeah. And if you want to have a conversation privately with either Kim or I, we certainly welcome that too. We just want to create a committee where we have individuals who are getting their needs met in addition to us meeting the needs of our community, so that it's a win-win for everybody.
I'm going to invite everybody over on the table with the cookies and the water. There are applications. So if you think the committee is something that you might be interested in, grab an application. We are asking for them back by December 15th. If you are interested, we would love to take them sooner than that. Drop it off, mail it in, email it, however you want to get it to us. Anything is fine. And then once we have a list of people, we'll set a date for an actual meeting and work on getting everyone together.
Yeah, we'll wait until after the first of the year to do that. We're all going to be a little busy between now and.
And thank you all for your time. We really
Yes,
appreciate that.
thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. And if you know of anyone else that you think might be well suited for this committee, we do have 2 additional meetings scheduled. There is one on Thursday at 10 a.m. and another at 5 p.m. on Thursday.
You know Detective Shaw? He
No.
used to be a police officer for DeKalb PD. You know him too. He's always wanting to get involved with like
Okay.
youth in the community. So
Okay.
he would be someone good to reach out to and get him to come. There's a few of them actually. We invite us if you have something. We want to work with the kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You have a way to get hold of him?
yes, I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I
All right.
can. I don't know about it.
Yeah, if you want to let them know about these meetings, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much
Okay.
for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.